Silence isn't empty, it's full of answers. Have you ever noticed how people panic when you stop giving them what they expect from you, your attention, your energy, your constant presence? My friends, that moment right there. That's when the truth starts to show, because when you stop chasing, when you go quiet, when you pull back your energy, people suddenly reveal who they really are, not through their words, but through their reactions. So before we dive in, press that like button, hit subscribe, and stay with me till the end. Because what I'm about to share with you might just change the way you see everyone and yourself. And trust me, if you leave halfway, you'll miss the part that makes all of this click. Hey folks, imagine this. You're standing in a crowded marketplace, everyone shouting, selling, trying to get attention, noise everywhere. But then, one person suddenly stops talking. They lean back, fold their arms, and say nothing. What happens? Everyone starts looking their way. Why? Because silence demands attention. It creates curiosity. It changes the rhythm. That's what happens when you stop explaining yourself to people who never listen, or stop giving attention to those who never earned it. Your silence becomes power. Most people think ignoring someone is petty or cruel, but that's a lie. The real cruelty is giving your peace to people who feed off your energy and never give back. You're not punishing anyone when you go quiet. You're protecting yourself. You're saying, I've had enough of begging to be understood. And that, my friends, is the start of emotional freedom. See, everyone loves attention. It's like sunshine. But too much sunshine makes people lazy. When you're always available, always texting first, always checking in, people stop appreciating it. They stop earning your light. And just like a plant that gets too much sun, they start to take your warmth for granted. But the moment you step into the shade, the moment you stop shining for everyone, that's when they realize how cold the world feels without you. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The more we value things outside our control, the less control we have." That's what this is all about. When you stop giving energy to what's outside your control, like how someone feels about you, you take that power back. You start to glow differently. And believe me, they'll notice. People always feel the absence of what they once took for granted. Let's be honest. It's hard to go quiet. It's hard to stop texting first, stop explaining, stop defending your worth. Your mind will tell you they'll forget you. But here's the truth. Silence doesn't make people forget. It makes them remember. It makes them replay every conversation, every laugh, every moment they thought they had endless access to. Your absence becomes the echo that keeps them up at night. You're not being cold, you're being calm. You're not being distant, you're being disciplined. You're teaching the world what kind of access your energy deserves. That's not ego, that's self-respect. Because when you always show up for everyone, you leave nothing for yourself. But when you pause, when you choose stillness over reaction, that's when your true strength appears. My friends, silence is not weakness, it's strategy. It's the pause between chaos and clarity. It's the doorway where you stop trying to prove your value and start living it. People may not understand your silence, but that's fine. It's not for them to understand, it's for you to protect. So as we go deeper into this today, remember this: every time you hold your silence, you're building power. Every time you choose calm over chaos, you're mastering yourself. You don't lose anything by ignoring the wrong ones. You gain everything by finding peace within yourself. Type this in the comments right now. My silence is power. Let the world know you're done explaining, done chasing, done begging to be seen. You're choosing peace, strength, and control. Press that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and stay with me, because what comes next will open your eyes to what really happens when you ignore them. Number 1, the power shift begins. When you stop feeding someone your energy, they start starving for your presence. Here's the truth, my friends. When you ignore them, When you finally stop pouring your attention into someone who once fed off it like oxygen, something powerful begins to shift. The moment you pull your energy back, you disrupt the rhythm they've grown addicted to. You stop dancing to their song, and suddenly the music doesn't sound the same anymore. They feel it. They might not admit it, but they feel the power shift. Because silence doesn't just remove noise, it removes control. Imagine this. You're the sun in someone's sky. Every day you rise, you shine, you warm their world. You text first, you check in, you reassure them. They wake up expecting your light without ever wondering how much energy it takes for you to burn that bright. But one day, you stop rising. You go still. No message, no call, just silence. At first, they might shrug it off, thinking, "Oh, they're just busy." But as hours turn into days, that warmth they took for granted starts to fade, and the cold begins to creep in. That's when the questions begin. Did I do something? Why aren't they reaching out? Have they moved on? And suddenly the power shifts. Because here's the part most people don't talk about. The one who controls their attention controls the dynamic. Attention is emotional currency, and most people spend it like they've got an endless supply. They give it away to those who don't earn it, and in doing so, they quietly give away their peace, their focus, and their self-respect. But when you stop, when you finally say no more, that's when you reclaim your energy. That's when they start to feel the imbalance. It's funny how they once acted like your presence didn't matter, but the moment it's gone, it becomes all they can think about. That's not coincidence. That's human psychology. People get addicted to patterns. They crave consistency, even if they don't respect it. So when you break that pattern, you don't just surprise them, you confuse their ego. They start searching for explanations, for closure, for reassurance that they're still in control. And when they don't find it, it stings. But let's be real, it's not easy for you either, right? Because silence doesn't just test them, it tests you too. Your mind will scream, "What if they forget me? What if they don't care? What if this silence pushes them away forever?" Those thoughts come from fear, not truth. Fear of being forgotten. Fear of losing something that maybe never truly saw your worth in the first place. But remember this, the ones who are meant for you will never be pushed away by your peace. They'll be drawn to it. Because real connection doesn't require constant noise. It thrives in mutual respect. You see, people think silence is emptiness, but it's actually clarity. It's a mirror that reflects truth. When you go quiet, you give them space to reveal themselves. Will they reach out? Will they stay gone? Will they fight for your presence or let you fade away? That's the beauty of silence. It does the filtering for you. You don't need to chase to know their heart. You just need to pause and observe. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." When you ignore them, you're not punishing anyone. You're practicing power over yourself. You're saying, "I'm done reacting. I choose peace over panic." And that, my friends, is strength most people will never understand. But let's break one of the biggest lies right now, the lie that ignoring someone makes you cold. No. Ignoring them doesn't mean you stopped caring. It means you started caring about yourself more. It means you're no longer willing to trade your peace for temporary validation. It means you finally realize that your energy is a privilege, not a product on sale. Here's the tricky part though. When you go silent, they'll test you. They'll poke, they'll post, they'll pretend. They'll act like they don't care. But every move they make will be designed to see if you still do. It's bait. It's the ego trying to lure you back into reaction. But if you've ever wondered why staying silent feels so difficult, that's why. It's not just about ignoring them, it's about ignoring your own need for reassurance. It's about mastering your emotions instead of letting them master you. And yes, it's going to feel uncomfortable at first. You'll want to text, to explain, to make them understand. But pause, breathe, because the more you resist that urge, the stronger you become. Every time you choose stillness over reaction, you're retraining your mind. You're teaching your heart patience and your spirit power. That's when your silence starts to speak louder than your words ever could. Because silence is not the absence of communication, it's the highest form of it. It says, I'm not fighting for your attention anymore, I'm protecting my energy. It says, if you want my presence, earn it. It says, I know my worth. And here's what's shocking, they'll feel it, even from a distance. Your silence will echo, your absence will speak. They'll replay every moment, every word, every chance they had to keep you, and they'll realize what they lost when they stopped appreciating what they had. That's not arrogance, that's karma, because silence always brings the truth to the surface. My friends, remember this. You are not the one losing when you stop chasing. You're the one regaining balance. You're taking your energy back from those who misused it. You're learning to be okay in your own quiet strength. That's not coldness, that's confidence, that's power, that's peace. So, from this moment on, stop giving people the reaction they expect. Stop feeding their ego with your attention. The world doesn't need another person begging to be noticed. It needs someone brave enough to stand in their silence and know their worth. Type this in the comments right now. I control my energy. Let the world see it. Show them, show yourself, show the people who underestimated your strength that you've found your power in peace. Because this is just the beginning. What happens next, when your silence starts to echo back to them, will shock you even more. Stay with me. Number 2, the ego's first reaction. The ego screams when silence enters the room. When you first ignore them, when you finally stop feeding them your attention, they don't react with humility. They react with ego. It's the part of them that can't stand losing control. You see, your silence doesn't just confuse them, it threatens them. Because people who are used to holding power through your validation suddenly feel powerless when you stop giving it. They go from being the center of your world to being background noise in yours. And for someone who thrived on your attention, that feels like suffocation. At first, they'll pretend not to care. They'll act like nothing has changed. They'll post things online that make it seem like they're happier than ever. They'll laugh louder in public. They'll suddenly glow up. But don't be fooled, my friends. That's not confidence, it's camouflage. It's the ego's desperate attempt to say, I don't need you. But deep down, they do. They miss the attention, the messages, the reassurance, the comfort of knowing you are always there. They might not admit it, but they feel the void your silence created. It's like this. Imagine someone who's always had music playing in the background. They've gotten used to it. It fills the silence, it soothes them, even if they're not consciously listening. Then one day, that music stops. Suddenly, the quiet feels heavy. The silence is loud. That's what happens when you ignore them. You take away the noise they've been using to avoid facing themselves. And at first, they'll resist it. They might even convince themselves that ignoring you back will make them feel in control again. They'll say things like, two can play that game, but here's what they don't understand. When you go silent from peace and they go silent from pride, the outcome is completely different. Your silence creates calm, theirs creates chaos. You're healing, they're hurting. You're regaining balance, they're losing it. That's the difference between emotional discipline and emotional reaction. Their ego will go through phases. First, denial. They'll tell themselves you're just playing games. Then anger. They'll start to feel insulted that you're not chasing anymore. Then comes confusion. They'll wonder if they did something wrong or if you've moved on. And finally, curiosity. They'll start paying attention to everything you do, even the things you don't say. That's when your silence starts living rent-free in their head. But here's where most people mess up. They break the silence too soon. They see that post, that story, that "I'm doing great without you" act, and they take the bait. They respond. They reach out. They try to defend their worth. And just like that, the ego wins. Because that's exactly what it wanted. A reaction. It doesn't care if the attention is positive or negative. It just wants proof that it still matters. Don't fall for it. When you stay silent, you're not losing control. You're proving you have it. You're showing that your emotions don't move at the command of someone else's behavior. You're showing that your peace is not up for auction. They might test you. They might text you something subtle like, "Hey, just checking in," or they might try to trigger you with something petty. But understand this clearly, their ego is fishing, not their heart. The heart stays quiet when pride is loud. Seneca once wrote, "He who controls himself cannot be controlled by others." Remember that when the temptation hits to respond, to explain, to prove something, the moment you do, you hand the power right back. But when you don't, when you stay composed and grounded, their ego begins to crumble. Because nothing scares the ego more than indifference. Think about it. How many times have you seen people act unbothered on the surface, but do everything possible to get a reaction? It's because silence is like a mirror. It reflects back everything they've been hiding. It forces them to confront the truth they've been running from. They were never in control. They only felt powerful because you kept giving them access. It won't be easy, I won't lie to you. Ignoring someone you once cared about feels unnatural. Your emotions will fight you. You'll feel the urge to prove your value, to remind them you exist. But this is where your growth begins, when you realize you don't need to prove anything. Your silence already speaks for you. You are not punishing them, you're teaching them. You're showing them what it feels like to lose access to something valuable. You're showing them that your attention isn't free, your energy isn't unlimited, and your peace is not for rent. You're teaching them the cost of taking you for granted. So, the next time they post that "look how happy I am" story or try to bait you with fake confidence, just smile. Because beneath that performance lies confusion. Beneath that pride lies insecurity. Beneath that laughter lies the sting of realizing they no longer control your emotions. Stay patient, my friends. Don't break the silence. Let their ego burn itself out. Because what comes next, when the ego quiets down and the truth starts to surface, is where the real power begins. Type this in the comments right now. My peace is priceless. Show them, show yourself, and show the world that you don't chase chaos. You choose calm. Stay with me, because what happens next will make everything they tried to hide come to light. Number 3, curiosity turns into obsession. The mind can handle rejection, but it cannot handle uncertainty. At first, when you ignore them, they try to play it cool. They'll shrug, act like nothing happened, maybe even convince themselves that your silence doesn't matter. But over time, that calm turns into curiosity, and that curiosity, it starts eating at them, because the human mind hates not knowing. It's not rejection that drives people crazy, it's the confusion of wondering why. They start thinking, why aren't they responding? Why aren't they chasing me anymore? What changed? And that's when your silence becomes louder than words. It becomes a mystery, an unanswered question, a puzzle their ego can't solve. You've broken their pattern, and now their mind is trying to put the pieces back together. Imagine this. You're reading a story you think you know the ending to. You've seen this movie before. You think you can predict what happens next. But suddenly, the story just stops. The screen goes black. No ending, no closure, just silence. What do? You keep thinking about it. You replay scenes. You start creating theories in your head. You even imagine endings that never happened. That's exactly what happens when you ignore them. You leave them with an unfinished story, and human beings are addicted to closure. They'll start revisiting old conversations, scrolling through messages, rereading things you said, trying to find signs they missed. They'll overanalyze your silence, trying to interpret it. Are they done with me? Are they seeing someone else? Are they mad? Are they testing me? Their mind turns into a storm of questions with no answers, and the more they think, the more obsessed they become. Because silence doesn't just leave space, it amplifies everything inside that space. Here's what most people don't realize. When you stop talking, they start talking to themselves, and that internal dialogue can be ruthless. They start doubting themselves, questioning their worth, and replaying every little thing they did wrong. It's like a haunting echo in their head, whispering what they were too proud to admit when they had your attention. I messed up. But their ego won't let them show it, so instead they'll pretend. They'll post something to get your attention, maybe even something dramatic or seductive. They'll drop subtle hints, liking your old photos, replying to your stories, or throwing shade online, all tiny attempts to see if you'll react. Because that's what curiosity does. It drives people to test boundaries they once ignored. They're trying to measure your silence. Do I still matter to them? It's ironic, isn't it? When you were available, they didn't notice. When you cared, they took it for granted. But the moment you withdraw, your absence becomes addictive. It's human nature. Scarcity creates value. The less of your energy they have, the more they crave it. Marcus Aurelius once said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." In other words, truth doesn't need to shout. When you stop explaining, when you stop defending, when you stop proving, your silence becomes the truth they can't escape. It forces them to face themselves without distraction. That's why silence hurts. It doesn't attack the surface, it cuts deep into the soul. But here's the catch, it's not just them being curious, it's their ego being terrified. Because your silence signals something they didn't expect, growth. It tells them you've outgrown their games, their control, their emotional dependency, and that realization hits hard. They might even tell themselves they don't care, but every night that thought will return. Why did they stop caring? Why am I thinking about this so much? This is when obsession begins. They start checking your activity. They look for clues. They imagine conversations that never happened. They feel uneasy in their own silence. Because what once was predictable, you being available, has now become uncertain. And nothing feeds obsession like uncertainty. Don't underestimate what that does to someone's pride. It cracks it. Every hour they don't hear from you feels heavier. Every post they see that doesn't involve them stings deeper. Your stillness becomes a mirror that reflects everything they tried to avoid, their guilt, their insecurity, their fear of being forgotten. But this is where you must stay grounded, because your silence is working, not as revenge, but as revelation. It's not about making them suffer, it's about making the truth surface. You're not ignoring them to prove a point. You're ignoring them because you've realized you're worth more than constant explanation. And yes, they'll come close again. They'll test the water with, "Hey, how have you been?" Or, "I was just thinking about you." But you'll know the difference this time. You'll see the curiosity behind the words, not the care. You'll recognize that it's not love, it's the discomfort of losing control. So don't let their curiosity pull you back into chaos. You've already come too far to give your peace away for someone else's confusion. Let them wonder, let them think, let them feel the silence. Because every time they replay what happened, every time they question why you stopped giving them your energy, they're really learning a lesson about themselves. Your silence is not punishment, it's the teacher. It doesn't shout, it reveals. And once that lesson hits, they'll never look at you the same way again. So write this in the comments, my friends. My silence speaks truth. Say it with confidence. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world that your quiet isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Stay with me, because what happens next, when their ego can no longer silence their emotions, is where the real transformation begins. Number 4, the game of control. When they can't control you, they'll try to control how others see you. Here's where it gets interesting, my friends. Once curiosity has eaten at them long enough and your silence still holds, they move into a new phase, control. This is when they start trying to get a reaction out of you in any way they can, because remember this truth: when people lose power over your attention, they don't surrender. They strategize. They look for new ways to get under your skin, to pull you back into the old cycle, to remind themselves they still matter. But what they don't realize is that every attempt exposes their weakness. At first, it's subtle. Maybe a random text that says, "Hey, just checking in," or something casual like, "Remember that thing we talked about?" It sounds harmless, but it's bait. They're not really checking on you. They're checking if they still have access. If you reply, they win. Because what they want isn't your words, it's your energy. They want to know they can still pull you out of your peace whenever they choose. And when you don't give them that satisfaction, that's when the real game begins. They might post something online designed to provoke you. A picture, a quote, a subtle jab that only you would recognize. It's not about the post, it's about the power. They're throwing the hook into the water to see if you'll bite. They want to see if you'll break your silence, if they can still control your emotions without ever saying your name. But when you remain calm, when you scroll past, when you give them nothing, it burns them. Because the truth is, they're not used to losing emotional control. They're used to you reacting, explaining, chasing, clarifying. Your stillness exposes their chaos. It's like this. Imagine a puppet master, strings in hand, controlling the show. They've been pulling the same strings for months, maybe years, and you've always moved when they wanted you to. But one day, you stop. You cut the strings. You just stand there in silence. The puppet master panics, waving their hands, trying to make you move again. But the more they pull, the more they realize their power is gone. That's what happens when you stop reacting. You take away the illusion of control, and they're left staring at their own emptiness. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. That's what you're doing right now. You're no longer giving them control over your emotions. You're no longer letting their chaos dictate your peace. And make no mistake, that shift terrifies them. Because control was never about love. It was about ego. It was about reassurance. As long as you kept reacting, they could tell themselves they still mattered. But when you stop reacting, when you start moving with quiet confidence, they lose that mirror. And losing control makes them desperate. They might suddenly become overly nice, pretending they've changed. Or they might turn cold, acting like you're the problem. Either way, it's still the same goal, to pull you back in. They'll use guilt, nostalgia, even anger if they have to. One moment they'll say, "I miss you," and the next, "You've really changed." It's all part of the same pattern, the need to feel like they still influence your emotions. But here's where your strength is tested. You have to see through it. You have to recognize that every move they make is not about love. It's about control. And I'll be honest, it's not easy. Because when someone you once cared for suddenly turns distant or manipulative, a part of you still wants to fix things, to prove you're not the villain. But you can't heal by returning to the place that hurt you. You can't find peace by re-entering the storm. That's the lie people fall for, that closure comes from conversation. But real closure comes from silence. It comes from understanding that you don't owe explanations to those who played with your peace. So, What do you do when they start playing these games? You stay calm. You stay grounded. You stay silent. Because silence doesn't mean you're weak. It means you refuse to play. Every time you ignore their bait, every time you walk away instead of reacting, you teach them a lesson no argument ever could, that your energy is sacred. You show them that you've outgrown manipulation. You show them that your peace is not a toy. The longer you stay still, the more they spiral. The control they once had begins to crumble, and the power dynamic reverses. Suddenly, they're the ones overthinking, reaching, wondering what happened. And that's the irony. The same silence they thought was harmless becomes the very thing that humbles them. My friends, always remember this: control is an illusion. The moment you stop feeding it, it collapses. You don't win by fighting back. You win by not playing. You don't prove your worth by reacting. You prove it by protecting your peace. Let them play their games in the noise. Your silence is the checkmate. Type this in the comments right now. I don't play their games. Show them, show yourself, show the world that your silence isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Because what comes next, when the mask of control finally falls off, will reveal everything. Stay with me, because the truth that follows this part is where everything changes. Number 5, the emotional mirror effect. Silence is a mirror. What they see in it is who they really are. When you stop giving them your attention, when your energy no longer flows their way, something powerful begins to happen. Your silence turns into a mirror. It reflects everything they've been hiding from themselves, all the insecurities, all the guilt, all the false confidence they wore like armor. It all starts to crack, because silence has a way of showing people their truth. When there's no one left to argue with, no one left to blame, they finally have to face themselves. At first, they'll resist it, they'll project, they'll say things like, "You've changed," or "You're cold now." But what they really mean is, "You stopped letting me use your energy to avoid my own reflection." You see, when you were always available, always giving, always trying to fix things, they didn't have to look inward. You carried the emotional weight for both of you. You were the one who made things right. But now, without your words, without your validation, without your attention, they're forced to confront the echo of their own behavior. And that echo gets loud. Imagine standing in front of a mirror that doesn't flatter you. No filter, no light tricks, no distractions, just raw truth staring back. That's what your silence does to them. It strips away the comfort of illusion. It shows them who they've become when no one is around to feed their ego. Maybe it's insecurity, maybe it's emptiness, maybe it's regret, but whatever it is, it hits them like a wave they can't escape. And this is the part that stings the most. They can't unsee it. Once your silence shows them their reflection, they can't go back to pretending. That's why some people get angry when you go quiet. It's not because they don't understand you. It's because they're starting to understand themselves, and it hurts. It's easier for them to call you distant than to admit they lost someone who gave them light. Seneca once wrote, "Most powerful is he who has himself in his own power." And that's what you've done. You've taken your emotional power back. You've stopped being the mirror that flatters and started being the mirror that reveals. You've stopped editing reality for them, and now they have to live with the unfiltered version of it. That's why your silence disturbs them. It removes the illusion of control. They start to remember things differently. The arguments they thought they won now feel hollow. The times they ignored you replay in their mind with guilt attached. Every moment they dismissed now becomes a question. Why did I take that for granted? That's the emotional mirror at work. It doesn't punish, it awakens. It's the universe showing them that actions always echo, and silence is the chamber where those echoes get loudest. But here's the truth, my friends. This mirror doesn't just reflect them, it also refines you. Because silence isn't just about proving a point, it's about rediscovering your peace. It's about realizing that you don't have to fight for validation, you don't have to chase understanding, and you don't have to beg for love that doesn't flow naturally. When you go silent, you start to see yourself more clearly too. You begin to understand how much you tolerated, how much you gave, how much of your identity was wrapped around someone else's approval. That's why this stage is both painful and powerful. It's transformation in disguise. The silence you hold becomes the space where both sides meet truth. For them, it's reflection. For you, it's revelation. You realize your worth doesn't decrease when someone fails to see it. You realize that walking away quietly is often louder than any argument. And you realize that the peace you were chasing from others can only be found inside yourself. It's not easy, I know, because the human heart wants closure, wants recognition, wants to be seen. But the deeper lesson here is that you don't need their acknowledgement to heal. Their silence back doesn't define your value, it only confirms your decision to protect it. When you hold your ground, when you stay calm and still, you're showing the universe that you're ready for relationships built on truth, not control. And as for them, they'll either face the mirror and grow, or they'll run from it and repeat. But either way, your role is done. You've done your part. You've shown them what their reflection looks like without your light softening it. And that's more powerful than any words could ever be. So remember this, my friends. Your silence isn't rejection, it's reflection. You're not shutting them out. You're holding up a mirror they can't ignore. And in time, they'll realize that what they lost wasn't just your attention, it was the peace, patience, and understanding that came with it. Type this in the comments right now. I am my peace. Say it with conviction. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world that your silence isn't emptiness, it's evolution. Stay with me, because what happens next, when they finally begin to understand what they lost, is the part where everything changes forever. Number 6. The awakening, realizing what they lost. People remember your silence longer than they ever remembered your words. Time has a way of revealing what emotions try to hide. At first, they tried to play it cool. They acted like your absence didn't matter, like your silence was just a phase. But as the days turn into weeks, something inside them starts to shift. The ego quiets down, and what replaces it is a deeper feeling, realization. They begin to see the truth that was always there but buried beneath pride. They didn't just lose your attention. They lost your energy, your presence, your peace, and that's when the awakening begins. It starts small. Maybe they hear a song that reminds them of you. Maybe they pass by a place where you used to spend time together. Maybe they scroll past something you once talked about, and for a brief moment, their chest tightens. That's memory knocking. Because no matter how hard they try to distract themselves, silence doesn't fade like noise. It lingers. And every reminder brings them back to the same realization. You're gone, and the world feels quieter without you. You see, when you were always there, always reaching out, always showing up, they didn't think twice about it. They assumed your presence was permanent, like air, invisible but necessary. But here's the irony, my friends. People don't appreciate air until they can't breathe. And when you go silent, that's exactly how it feels to them. The air changes. The peace they once felt around you becomes a hollow space they can't fill. At first, they'll try to replace you. They'll talk to new people, distract themselves, fill their schedule with anything that numbs the emptiness. But it doesn't work, because you can replace attention, but you can't replace energy, and your energy, calm, consistent, authentic, was something their soul had quietly gotten used to. Now, in your silence, they begin to feel the difference between attention and connection, between noise and peace, between being wanted and being valued. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Loss is nothing else but change, and change is nature's delight." Your silence becomes their teacher. It becomes the change they didn't want but needed. Because it exposes what they refused to see when they had you. That genuine energy is rare, and once lost, it cannot be recreated. They start to realize how easy you made things, how your presence softened the chaos in their life. And suddenly, they miss the things they once ignored. The small check-ins, the kindness, the patience, the warmth of knowing someone actually cared. That's the beautiful irony of silence. It doesn't shout. It doesn't demand. It simply lets time do the talking. And time has a cruel but necessary way of reminding people what they've lost. Every moment you remain silent is a mirror showing them that life without your energy feels incomplete. And that's when the awakening truly hits, not just in their mind, but in their heart. But let's be honest, my friends, it wasn't easy for you either. The silence tested you. It tested your patience, your strength, your faith in yourself. You had moments where you almost broke it, where you wanted to explain, to reach out, to make them understand. But you didn't. You held your ground. And because of that, you shifted the energy forever. You stopped fighting for their attention and started building your peace. That's when the power dynamic changed. Because the one who can walk away without bitterness, without resentment, without noise, that's the one who truly wins. Now, while they're sitting in reflection, you're rising in peace. They're haunted by the silence that used to comfort them, while you're healed by the very same silence that once hurt you. That's the contrast. You both experienced the same quiet, but for you, it became strength. For them, it became regret. And this is the truth no one likes to admit. Most people only realize your value in your absence. They only see your light when it stops shining for them. They only feel your love when it's no longer available on demand. And when that realization hits, it's too late to go back. Because the version of you they lost doesn't exist anymore. The silence that started as protection turned into transformation. So don't rush to break it. Don't go back to prove a point. Let the silence keep speaking for you, because right now it's teaching them what words never could, that your presence was a privilege, not a guarantee, that your peace was a gift, not a game, and that losing you wasn't an accident, it was a consequence. They'll remember you, my friends. Maybe not through your words, but through the feeling your silence left behind, that haunting calm that reminds them of what they took for granted. Type this in the comments right now. My silence changed everything. Let it be your affirmation, your truth, your quiet victory. Show them, show yourself, and show the world that you didn't lose them. You found yourself. Stay with me, because what happens next, when they try to come back, will show you just how powerful your silence really was. Number 7. The return or the reveal. Sometimes silence doesn't make them come back. It makes the truth finally show. Here's where everything reaches its peak, my friends. After all the confusion, the ego battles, and the silence that stretched longer than they expected, something inside them finally snaps. They either come back or they reveal who they truly were all along, and both outcomes serve you. For some, the realization hits too hard to ignore. They'll reach out, maybe with a simple message, maybe with a long apology. They'll tell you they've been thinking, that they miss your energy, your peace, your presence. They'll promise change, swear they've grown, and maybe they truly have. Because silence has a way of forcing reflection, of stripping away pride until all that's left is truth. And if that truth brings them back humbly, not to control you, but to rebuild with respect, that's a sign of growth. But others, they won't return. They'll vanish. They'll find distractions, blame you, rewrite the story to protect their ego. They'll say you were the problem, not because it's true, but because facing their reflection would be too painful. And that's okay, because silence doesn't only bring back the right ones, it removes the wrong ones. It's the great divider between what's meant for you and what was only meant to test you. The beauty of this final phase is that you no longer need their reaction to validate your strength. Whether they come back or disappear, your silence already did its job. It brought clarity. You now see who was genuine and who was only attached to your energy. You learned that your peace is more valuable than anyone's approval, and that's a power they can't take back. Remember, my friends, your silence wasn't punishment. It was purification. It filtered out what was fake and revealed what was real. It didn't destroy, it refined. It didn't end something, it evolved you. So take this moment as your victory. You didn't chase, you didn't beg, you didn't explain. You stood still, and the truth came to you. That's mastery. Type this in the comments right now. My silence revealed the truth. Let the world see your strength. If this message resonated with you, press that like button, share this with someone who needs it, and subscribe for more reminders of your power. Because silence, my friends, it doesn't end stories. It reveals their real ending.